Hello, everyone. My name is Dara, and this is Dear Hallmark. This is your space where we can come and chill and chat about all things Hallmark Channel. Now, normally I'm by myself talking about said Hallmark movies, but today I am not by myself. I have a special guest for us in the home of Dear Hallmark. We have the producer of the Countdown to Christmas movie, The Finnish Line, with us, Mr. Andrew Gernhard. Andrew, thank you so much for being here.
No problem. Love to be here.
Awesome. I like to start off with an icebreaker question before we kind of get into the meat and
Okay.
potatoes of our
Yep.
conversation. So, Andrew, it's the holidays now. And is there a specific dish that you yourself either like to cook or like to eat for the holidays?
Well, that's interesting because my partner, Christy, she makes a eggplant parmesan that is to die for. And it
Ooh,
is it is not good for you in any way possible. Between the cheese and the sauce and the oils and everything involved. But it is my favorite part of the holiday. That dish she makes it once a year, and that is my favorite during the holidays.
that is awesome. Now, is there something that you like to cook? Like, are you in the kitchen or you're more so a participator in terms of you eating during the holidays?
Well, I do a lot of cooking. I was actually going to be a chef before I got into movies.
No
So
way.
that was one of my I wanted to get that was one of my interests anyway when I went to college. So I thought about being a chef, but that is also just as equally hard as being a producer. And so I do make everything, nothing too exotic, but I can pretty much handle anything in the kitchen.
That is awesome. When you were in college, what was it that had you make that switch where your interest kind of peaked more into movies than in the culinary field?
Well, I kind of made the decision before I went to college. When I was in high school, I was like, oh, do I want to get into video production or art or being a chef? And I actually thought about being a priest, funny enough. But before I even went to college, I said, oh, I'm going to go into video production because I won a bunch of awards during my graduation ceremony for video production and art. And that's kind of the path I went. But I know Johnson and Wales is in Rhode Island, and that was one of my options,
Hmm.
which is great. Culinary school. But I just decided to go to Southern Connecticut State University for a major in video production, television production, and a minor in graphic design.
Wow. So let's rewind all the way back. How did you even get into wanting to do anything about video production at all? Like, how did video production come into your life?
Well, I came from a time when it was hard to make video production and movies. Like there was no iPhones. I mean, the cameras were recorded on VHS. When you
Hmm.
edited, it was big machines that were, tape to tape editing. So I got into it because I went to an art high school, Norwich Free Academy, where there's a lot of artists. And throughout my elementary school and junior high, I was like the best artist. Everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, he's so good." But then when I went to high school, I probably went with the most talented class ever to graduate my high school with art. And I realized at the end of the year, I'm not going to win anything for art because I'm just not good enough. So video was an option to win some awards. So by default, I taught myself video just to
Wow.
get scholarships. And I went to public access. I taught, I got it in that way. I made a bunch of videos and I won a big award and some money. And that's kind of launched me into my real interest of video production and film production.
So, can you talk a little bit after high school, like in college, what it was like for you studying, kind of really getting into the like sinking your teeth into all of the aspects of video production and what that experience was like for you?
Well, my high school is or not high school, college was very practical. Southern Connecticut, they focused on jobs and working in television production, news production, corporate videos, commercials. They were not so pro movies, even
Mm.
though that was part of it. So I went in, I wanted to be in movies, but I figured, oh, this is a good place to get, commercials, television, you're all kind of interconnected. So I went in hard. I did the full freshman year stuff, but then I took but because of my knowledge of video production, I got into the advanced classes pretty fast. So I basically finished 4 years of college in three, and kind of did the last year was a bunch of basic courses that I kind of skipped. So I kind of breezed through it in that final year. And right after that, I started working in educational videos, creating videos for kids for schools.
So let's go into that. Post grad, post college, was that how was that like for you actually getting into the industry? And can you talk a little bit about that process? Like, how did you come to get even getting into educational videos?
Well, I worked with a company out of Bristol called Mazzarella Productions, and they had a contract to do videos for kids. How to deal with potty, how to learn history, science.
Gotcha.
Me and another guy started working for them, and we did a bunch of these 15, 20 minute educational videos. We used to do a bunch a month, maybe two or three a month. And it was driving us insane working with kids and animals. So we both love Jaws, so we did a shot for shot parody of Jaws called Trees, which is about a killer great white pine tree versus a lumberjack, a botanist, and a forest ranger. And all of a sudden, we got, when the internet came out, we got a bunch of reviews as we were making it, and ended up being picked up for Blockbuster Video, Hollywood Video, and that kind of launched me into, video stores. Who remembers those?
Oh my
But
gosh.
that kind
I
of
do.
launched me into, getting into movies. So, and then we kind of went into just doing purely direct to video monster movies, because that's what was selling when you didn't have money. That we didn't have stars. We had, a killer Sasquatch, werewolves, resurrected Amish people with sickles, all this crazy stuff.
Can you can you talk a little bit about exactly what a producer does on a movie set and kind of what their job description is? Because and we talked a little bit about this on offline, but I've talked with a few producers here at Dear Hallmark, and I'm always curious to hear people's interpretation of what it is a producer does. And I know that there is like a textbook definition, but I would love to hear, especially given your journey, like what your thoughts on exactly what a producer does and what they bring to the set.
Well, I mean, there's many different producers, like you may have mentioned. The producer, the main producer, is the person who's in charge of the movie from beginning to end. They deal with a lot of the contracts, a lot of the agreements, developing the movie, delivering the movie. Kind of, I'm involved from the very beginning to the very end, and all the nuts and bolts. And you do have a line producer. They're in charge basically of the money and the crew. So they're in charge of the budget, the money, and the crew, and they report to the producer. And then you have an executive producer or a creative producer that is basically the liaison to the networks or studios,
Mm,
that help with the art, like the wardrobe, the makeup, to make sure
okay.
everything's approved. But also there's a side definition. Sometimes that's a more of a creative producer, but Hallmark calls them executive producers. Some executive producers are basically a title only, that when somebody, like, sometimes you see movies with like 10 executive producers, it's because that person brought something essential to the movie, whether it's the story, whether it's an actor or actress, whether it's funding. Executive producer like brings a big component, but they're not necessarily involved with the day-to-day operations. And then you have some titles like associate producer, which are kind of gratis titles. They did something for the movie, but it was kind of more than what their traditional role is. So it's kind of they're boosted up to an associate producer. But yeah, what I do is I deal with all the problems before and after the movie ends. I help out the line producer. I also work with the network, with the studio, because I've been all of them. I've been associate producer, producer, co-producers, executive, but the only thing I haven't been is a line producer.
Okay. So, an executive producer, in some sense, do they have say in casting? Like, do they have say in each of those individual departments? Or do they more so just leave it in the hands of the people that, in terms of like the creative producer or the people who are in charge of the art department and different things like that?
Yeah, the executive producer typically doesn't have say. The
Okay.
creative executive producer does, because they
Okay.
work with like the studio or network. But an executive producer would be like, oh, I need, you know, Nicolas Cage in a movie. And all of a sudden, I find somebody who's like, "Oh, I can get you Nicolas Cage. I get him for X amount of dollars for this many days." And they're like, "Okay, we'll do that. Here's your fee, and also you get an executive producer title." So they would bring like a vital component that will make the movie better or more marketable.
Okay. So could you talk about a time, like, I'm trying to see how to articulate this. Maybe the most wild thing, or like wild problem that happened on set that you had to bring a solution for, that you had to solve kind of right there in the moment.
Oh gosh, I could say some things that I will not say because they would blow people's minds. Not on Hallmark movies, on other movies that were like not even believable by any human standards I have dealt with. I'm trying to think of something that is G-rated that I can actually talk about. That's crazy. To tell you the truth, with Hallmark, there hasn't been any real huge problems like that are like wild and wacky. Kind of standard stuff as far as timing, budgets, all that type of stuff. But let me think of something that's oh my God, this is the first hard question I think I've had to answer because of my restrictions of what I need to say. Um, Oh, I mean, a typical here's why I won't mention names. A typical thing is a lot of times we get actors, and they know, okay, you're going to take this role and you're going to be working with, you read the script, they understand the script, and their best friend is a dog, and all this type of stuff. And the actor's like, yeah, great, I can do that. And then you hire the actor, they're on the ground, and they're like, oh, I'm petrified of animals. We've had that happen before where your best friend was supposed to be a dog. And in the movie, it's terrible because he's holding the dog out like 10 feet, away from him. And there's stuff like that happens where like you don't realize, the vital component is this relationship and the actor doesn't, work with dogs. Even though
Wow.
they said they did. That's something that is kind of G-rated.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Speaking of dogs, that's a perfect segue into the Countdown to Christmas movie, The Finish Line, starring Bo Murchoff and Kim Matula. And this one was shot on location. That's what I want to I want to talk to you about first. What was your idea behind this being shot on location in Finland?
Well, and by the way, the actor was not part of Finish Line, just so you know. Those people, no, everybody there loved dogs because we had to deal with a ton of dogs. In fact, the actors in that movie blew my mind with, especially Kim, with how she worked with the dogs. But the idea came from Dustin and I. We come up with ideas all the time to develop into movies, and Dustin's the director and my producing partner. And we thought of all of a sudden I started to see these things that, where Santa lives is Lapland, Finland,
Mm.
and we're like, oh, we should, Hallmark should absolutely do something in Lapland, Finland. Hallmark is the apex of Christmas, it should involve, Santa's hometown.
Yeah.
So, this movie probably started, gosh, I hate to say maybe 2 years ago was the original idea. Went through a bunch of different versions, and it ended up being a Finish Line, which we did shoot in Lapland, but it was also shot in Iceland as well. A couple of weeks were in the interiors, and some of the closer sequences were shot in Iceland, and then there was a week in Lapland, Finland, which was very north, and it was just an amazing experience.
Finland is because I've been able to get to Norway and Sweden and Denmark, so it's like Finland and Iceland are the two left that I want to get to. So when I saw that this was on location in Finland, if ever I wanted to jump through a screen, it was in
Yep.
it was in this movie. It was so beautiful. And can you talk a little bit about the story and kind of developing the story, with it being like a sled dog race, which was very different for Hallmark. It still had the heart in terms of like her connection with her dad. But could you go in a little bit about the story and kind of where the heart of the story came from?
Yeah, well, the big thing about my company and everybody we work with, we're trying to push the levels of Hallmark with what they can do as far as a story, what they can do as far as budgets, what they can do as far as locations. So, we come up with these amazing locations, and we know that Hallmark, you need the Christmas, you need the
Mhm.
relationships, you need the heart. So that is still there in all of our movies. Everything that Hallmark needs is in there. And then the dog race idea came up, and it was developed from there, with the father, and it's about a woman who's it's like a redemption story, and she comes to Finland to finish the race against the opponent that beat her father years ago. And the race happens to take place at Christmas, and it's the route Santa took in Finland, and they do stuff like deliver Santa's letter, drop off some presents. There's a little bit of tasks involved with this race. And she realizes, in the end, she makes peace with her parents, basically, who are both unfortunately passed. And then, she finds that balance of her career and her life. And also, she's a woman who is afraid to take steps forward without knowing the clear path. And
Mhm.
now at the end of the movie, she's like, I'm gonna, take a chance and just go with it. And I think Bo and her are a great couple in this. Their connection, I think, is great in this movie. So, I'm very happy with the way it turned out. It was a very tough movie to make, for sure.
Go into that. What about it was what was the toughest aspect of it for you?
Well, it was big in scope. I mean,
Mm.
you're talking ensemble cast shot in two different countries with over 60 dogs in
I was
use.
going to ask you
So,
about that. Yeah.
limited budget, limited time. I mean, we shot this movie and The Christmas Quest with Lacey and Christopher at the same time. So we prepped both movies. We shot Finish Line, took a break, prepped the second movie, then shot Christmas Quest, and then went right into post production for both. But it was not easy creating specialty sleighs. We have a woman hanging off a cliff. That's never been done in a Hallmark movie before.
Right.
That was like a big. So I mean, there was a villain in a Hallmark movie. The guy was a villain. I've never seen a villain. I got death threats from Hallmark fans when I had a mean boss years
I'm
ago.
sorry.
Oh my goodness. When I have a villain in this movie, people are going to end up on my door, but people accepted it. I mean, when both movies aired this past weekend, I was, patiently waiting, like, oh my goodness, our Hallmark audience is going to accept, a movie set at Christmas that's a little actiony, a little thriller, a little outside the box, and people loved it. Both movies. I mean, I feel like they really loved Finish Line, great comments, and really loved, Christmas Quest. And of course, you get your outliers of people. Somebody reviewed Christmas Quest saying this is clearly shot in Canada. What? Every scene is in Iceland. Like they're interacting in Iceland. How is it clearly shot in Canada? Nothing about this movie's Canada. So it's all, everybody has their own perspective because everybody has their own opinions. But I was very happy with both movies.
The consensus that I heard about Christmas Quest, it was exquisite, like 5 stars all around. And then what I heard about Finish Line, I haven't seen Christmas Quest yet because it was like 8, 10 movies over
Yeah.
Thanksgiving weekend, so it was a lot to get through. But I did see Finish Line, and what I heard, like, consistently with Finish Line, people were like, this is the sleeper hit of the year, in the sense that it didn't get as much promotion because Holiday Touchdown was just the day before.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
it's kind of like you have, and I know for me personally, Finish Line was the movie I was most excited about because of it being on location. I follow Keith Costumes and Daniel King on Instagram, so I was watching them
Yep.
as they were going through. So I was excited about it being on location, and I was excited about Bo and Kim because I think they're two both phenomenal actors, and to see them together, I was like, oh, this is like, it's starting off at a 5 star for me, and it can only go
Yep.
it can only go
Yep.
up. And so to watch it, first of all, I think it was shot beautifully. I like it had to me it had this like overwhelming beautiful blue hue to it that just gave it like this to me. I felt like I was in a dream. And it could be just because my desire to just go to Finland in the first place, so that probably, but like I enjoyed the way this was shot, and I definitely enjoyed the dogs because those are the type, I call them Narnia dogs. Like those are the type of
Yep.
dogs that I want to have. So can you talk about that whole process? You said 60 dogs. Like what was that like shooting with 60 dogs, Andrew?
Well, it's also 60 dogs in two different countries, and we couldn't cross the dogs. Like we couldn't ship the dogs either way. So when we were in Iceland, we worked with about 20 something dogs, for the Iceland portion. And then we matched the dogs in Lapland, Finland with another like 40 dogs. So these dogs were wonderful to work with. The trainers were wonderful. These dogs, by the way, live better than you and I. That is the truth. I mean, their condos they lived in Iceland were unbelievable. These dogs, and they love sled racing, especially the ones in Lapland, Finland. I mean, what was tough for the dogs was the dialogue scenes because these dogs were like, tied up, ready to go into sleds, and these dogs were ready to go because they're like, I want to race, I want to race, I want to race, because that's their goal.
Yeah.
And so I know when our actors got on there, they dogs took off like a bat out of hell because they loved getting in their races. But yeah, the dogs were wonderful. They were, they're treated awesome. They treated us awesome. Yeah, I spent a lot of time with the dogs, just keeping them happy and interacting with them.
So for someone who hasn't seen Finish Line yet, because like I said, there were just a lot of movies that premiered over that last weekend. What would you say to that person who hasn't seen Finish Line yet but is considering it? How would you tip them over to go ahead and press play on their DVR for that?
Well, I always go to the same thing. If you love Hallmark movies, this is something different, and that's what we want people to. Like, I mean, Hallmark is expanding so much now. They got Hallmark Plus. They're on Netflix now. They have these cruises, and I think making the stories bigger, but keeping that heart, keeping that good ending, I think is important. And I think just if you want to see a Hallmark movie that's different, this is the one to watch.
It definitely, like, I enjoyed it. Again, I think my Finland bias is showing, but I really really enjoyed it. So thank you so much for even having the idea for doing something different like this. And even though I didn't get a chance to see Christmas Quest yet, can you talk about what that process was like, shooting two movies at the same time cross countries? Like what? How? Like how did that, how does that work?
Well, for number one, I like to challenge myself. I like to be, I know the fans love these movies, and I don't want to fake them out. Like if we're shooting in a location, I want to be in that location. Like if we say we're going to Iceland, we go to Iceland. We don't do Canada like that one reviewer said. I want to, some things have obviously got to be faked because they're movies, but I want to bring people on that journey. And, I know these two movies were tough because of the time constraints, the budgets, and they were bigger concepts, but I just wanted to do them, not just for Hallmark, but for myself and for the crews, to do something really different. And prepping them together was great because they were both winter movies. They were both kind of actiony movies, and once we started working with the Iceland crew, the Finnish crew, some of our American crew came over, we really started to gel right away. And that's what helped make the two movies easier because of just this interactions we had with each other and how we knew to help each other, to push each other forward, and to push the boundaries. But Christmas Quest was also great. It's like Indiana Jones light in Iceland, and really, I love Iceland. Between these movies and one we did before, Love on Iceland, I've done 3 movies in Iceland, and I
You
can't
did Love
say,
on Iceland? That's one of my
yeah, I did Love
favorites.
on Iceland. Yeah, and that I love the Iceland crew. I love the culture. I love the country. I would go to Iceland anytime asked to do a movie in Iceland and Finland as well. And you never know, we might be going back to some of these places in the future.
What? So I have two questions. What's a location that you love to that you'll love to film at, that you would love to film at that you haven't had the opportunity to yet?
Um, that'd be giving away secrets because I think
Uh-oh.
I have. Yeah, I don't want to give other producers my goals because I've learned from before when I mention something, not mentioning names, all of a sudden another producer's making a movie based on where I want to go. So I do have some
Noted.
dream places, but they're already in development into making something, something we'll see in the future.
Well, that's awesome. And so my next question, I heard you mention the crew and just how much they gel together, whether it was the Finnish crew, Icelandic crew, American crew. And one of my theme for this year for Countdown to Christmas is community. And so I wanted to ask you, Andrew, how important is community for you in the industry? Speaking as someone who's more so behind the scenes of it all, but you get your vantage point is vast compared to the other, like compared to maybe the actors who has a specific vantage point. You're able to kind of get the 30,000 foot view of everything. So what does community look like and mean to you in the industry?
Well, I think community and communication are the biggest film production. And like any business, it's not just film. Communication's hard. Getting the right, doing the right emotion with how you talk, making sure all the facts are there. But I think it's very important to for your production team to gel, whether they're in Connecticut, overseas, and it's always a little tough because you get 100 people thrown together out of nowhere to create this movie in 3 weeks of prep, 3 weeks of shooting. That's tough. That's
Yeah.
very tough. But and so I like to do a lot of icebreakers. We hang out, we go to dinner, we grab beers, we talk about what we have, what our agendas are in the future, and you really get to mesh and then you get to learn how to work with each other. And I think it's just very important, work on your strengths, help out people's with their strengths and weaknesses, and really be helpful to each other and be understanding. That's the main thing is understanding of everybody's emotions because there is work, but then there's what everybody's going through outside of work. Some people could have some family issues or some other work issues, and you got to take that into account when you are working with people that even though you're the focus of what's going on now, people have lives. And you got to keep that in mind if somebody comes in angry or somebody comes in depressed, just know that there are other things happening in other people's lives. So I think communication, community is huge, not just in the film industry, but in every industry and in everybody's lives.
Absolutely. So what's next for you? Like, do you see yourself operating in other avenues in the film industry outside of producing? Like, would you write? Would you direct? Like, are there opportunities for you to do something else, or are you kind of like you're just kind of like the main track for you is producing?
Well, I directed one movie called Assault of the Sasquatch. I kind of did it as a bet. It sold to Warner Brothers, funny enough. It was not great, but it sold. I have no interest in directing. I cannot write besides emails. So I think I'll stick to, I like producing. I like working with people. I like finding solutions. I like developing stories. So that's kind of where I am. I think that's kind of, I'm 47 now. I'm not getting any younger. So I think that's where I'm going to go. And, that it's a full-time job anyway. Besides working and developing movies, it's, where are we going in the future? What's streaming doing? What's cable doing? Where are movies going? Where's AI? Where's the audiences? So there's a lot of constantly reading to see where are we going, and you're having to change. We went through COVID. The whole industry
Yeah.
went through COVID. The whole country went through COVID. The whole world went through COVID, and then
Yeah.
we went through these strikes that happened. And now there's people aren't watching long form anymore, but now it's kind of coming back with blockbuster hits hitting movie theaters. So it's a matter of just staying on that ship and keeping that periscope out, looking to see what's in the future.
What advice would you give to someone who is maybe considering getting in the film industry, but kind of just wants to, like, they're listening to this and they're like, oh, this might be something that I want to get into. Like, they find that they may have some skill sets that may be applicable to this role within the industry. What kind of advice would you give them?
Well, you know, I will get it's a little positive, a little negative. In my entire life, I've always, I'm a planner, I'm this. The future right now for entertainment is very unclear. Like
Mm,
where is it going? Is AI going to eventually replace film? I think it is. I think in 10
mm,
years, the idea of me being out in the field shooting for 12, 14 hours is not going to be a thing. I think
wow.
AI is going to become so big that they're just going to say Arnold Schwarzenegger walks into a room, he's the Terminator, and it creates it, as well as you would out filming it. So, but like everything else, it's just a change. It's a new media. So it's what is film going to morph into? Is that going to be more where it's relied on producers, directors, editors, visual effects people, and less production people? Will production come back? Right now, it's very unclear of what the future will hold. I know people will always love stories. People will always love movies,
Yeah.
television, short films. So there is going to be something there. If you ask me this question a year from now, I will probably have a better perspective.
Mm,
But I would say, for young people getting into it or anybody getting into it, just keep your eye on the news, learn about AI, learn about film production, learn about old film production because you can't just jump
mm,
into AI if you're a filmmaker.
yeah.
Learn your craft and do what you love. Really, that's the kind of thing that you can focus on.
Oh man, AI robot is real. AI it's like AI is
Um, it's,
scary.
and I'm just talking about uses of it in film.
Right.
The whole world's going to be affected. Medical, governments,
I'm in
news.
finance, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean everything is AI. I mean, and the question is what I still don't understand. I understand AI for a menial task, but why would you create something to replace being a creative? So
That's
you
what I
took
wanted.
away you're taking away what artists are doing for writing and movies. What so you can like not work or not like so you can focus on paying bills? I don't know. Like you people want it, people want that. And the one warning I have also is that, you know, AI using AI is a talent, but AI is not talent. Like I can go in. That's what I think. I'm already seeing people saying, "Oh, look at this portrait I did. Look at this artwork I did." You did not do that. You wrote up a paragraph and it created it, and this is what it is. I mean, it does not. AI does not make talent. Like Michelangelo paints. He was a great painter, but somebody who just type up this, that is not the talent of Michelangelo. So
Andrew,
that's what people don't.
you're saying my heart. Like, not to get philosophical, but I feel like this is why I'm on the campaign trail to talk, like talking about the necessity of art in general. And I feel like it's what makes us human. Like like art, creativity is what makes us human. Because like you said, like just typing something in like a chat
Yep.
GPT generator or whatever. I'm thinking now in literature, like you can just put a prompt. My sister, she told me she was like, what would a reboot of this show look like? And she put it in an
Yep.
AI generator and they generated
They created.
a whole script. And I was
Yep.
just like, this is wild. And I
Yep.
personally, I'm not here for it. I'm much like I campaign for people, for human beings being the
Yep.
creators and being the ones who run these productions, because it's, again, to me, art, especially like no matter what the medium is so necessary for us as humans, whether we're the ones creating it. More importantly, in this instance, we're the ones creating it, but also in terms of ingesting. Because I personally, even though when AI did it, that's not art to me. Because there's, like you said, like
No.
there's no talent in that. Like that's not a definition of art to me. So I just, now I got stirred up. I gotta calm down. But like,
No. And the thing is, and I'm not here to be anti-AI. I think AI is a great tool for
yeah,
humans.
yeah,
It can help you with audio, can help you with visual effects, and I think it should be used as a tool. But there's a big difference between a painter who's locked himself in a room to paint this great thing and they're sweating and they're not eating and they're doing this painting for a week and they sit it down after a week and they look at their painting and they're like, oh my gosh, I did this.
yeah.
Like this was my time, my talent. Then somebody typing up, let's paint this, let's do a daisy painting. And you didn't put any effort into that.
Yeah.
That's the difference. And I, going out and shooting a Hallmark film for 15 days, blood, sweat, and tears,
Yeah.
cold, hot, great. That's what makes a movie,
Yeah.
and then use AI to help do it. But you know what? Who knows what the future will hold. I'm hopeful for it because humans always find a way to bring it back. So I think all life is based on cycles,
Oh
and,
yeah.
and that's happen. Everything is cycle.
And I'm a firm believer of like history will repeat itself. So whether, even though AI is having its moment, I think people are going to yearn for, and you even see it now, like people yearning for simpler times, like people, like the nostalgia of it all. I feel like even though AI is having its moment, at some point we are going to get back to having those people on, like in production, and people actually making these movies, because people are gonna want something real and want something that has soul,
Yep, yep.
and that has passion to it. So
But I
yeah.
will enjoy seeing like I know 30 years from now you and I are going to be watching an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie when he was 25 years old, and I will enjoy as an old man seeing Arnold again because I don't think he's going to be around 25, 30 years from now, but who knows? He may, because who knows what he knows? He might be a robot. We never know. But I mean, I think that'll be cool, to see our heroes and villains again. But I don't want them to replace humans as they are now.
Agreed. Agreed. Well, Andrew, I want to thank you so much for coming into the home of Dear Hallmark and kind of pulling back the curtain, if you will, on the behind the scenes of filmmaking. So, what I like to do with my guests is I like to have them have the last word. So, in this moment, you can say whatever it is you want to say, whether you want to talk about Terminator, I don't know, Finnish chocolate. You can just use this moment to say whatever it is you want to say, and I'll let you have the last word here before we close.
Well, I'll keep it simple. Thank you for having me on the show. And thank you for everybody, watching our films over the years. We really like making movies. We really like challenging ourselves. And, we appreciate everything. And we appreciate the eyeballs, whether they're streaming or broadcast or on the big screen. I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to make entertainment for everybody.
Awesome. Well, everyone, that's going to do it for this episode of Dear Hallmark. He's Andrew. I'm Dara, and I'll talk to you guys in the next episode. Ciao, my friends.